The Pittsburgh Pirates defeated the Chicago Cubs again to clinch a series win at Wrigley Field. Is this series an indication that they could have a pretty strong ending to 2024? We're going to discuss on today's episode of Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And that is right. That is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. My name is Ethan Smith. You can follow me on Twitter right there at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates from a lifelong fan to lifelong fans just like you. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. The Pirates are about to start their longest remaining homestand of 2024 tomorrow against the Washington Nationals. So if you want to get some quick last-minute tickets to the Pirates before the season is over, make sure you go to Game Time and download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. We all like saving money in this day and age, I would think. You know, money... It's fun to get discounts on things. You get discounts on stuff like FanDuel. You get discounts on stuff like Game Time. You get discounts on stuff like Prize Picks. All of it. Ibotta. We got it all here at the Locked On Pirates podcast. And what we also got over the last 2 days from our Pittsburgh Pirates was 2 wins over the NL Central rival Chicago Cubs in Wrigley Field. A series very, very, very similar to the one last season when the Pirates were kind of out of the playoff race. The Cubs were just right there trying to get in, and the Pirates came into Wrigley Field and beat them last year. We all remember that infamous Joshua Palacios home run. Well, this series is starting to have a similar feeling to that one as the Pittsburgh Pirates won 5-0 over the Chicago Cubs, just blanking them, going after Kyle Hendricks again for the second time in a week. And if we remember, only a week ago, the Pirates got swept by the Chicago Cubs team, and will look to aim to beat them and sweep them in this one. Obviously, we'll be talking about Game 3 later on the show. But this was another good game from this Pirates team. Andrew McCutchen came up big again with an RBI. Rowdy Tellez had an RBI. Jared Triolo with a big day as well with 3 RBIs on the evening. Big talk again was Paul Skenes. We talked about Paul Skenes yesterday and his chances to win the Rookie of the Year award. You guys shared some of your comments under that show saying it might be a done deal at this point with Jackson Merrill and the way that he's played. But Paul Skenes was impressive again. Obviously, he didn't go very deep in this game, only going 5 innings, but only 4 hits allowed. The walks were a little bit of a problem. He had 4 walks on the day, 6 strikeouts, and his ERA is now a 2.13 in his rookie campaign. He also tied the Pirates' rookie record for strikeouts in a season. So the next start he makes, he will obviously break that rookie record. A massive accolade for Paul Skenes. But for the second straight evening, the bullpen looked good again. The bullpen has started to kind of turn a corner here over the last couple of days. Even in that Cleveland series, as I mentioned yesterday on the show, talking about that Saturday game where the bullpen kind of came out of its funk a little bit and started to figure things out. Well, they did that yesterday when they absolutely needed to. Colin Holderman made his first outing in quite a while. Obviously went on the IL after that terrible string of about a week and a half where he was just looking absolutely awful against the Arizona Diamondbacks and other teams. He goes in, throws a scoreless inning with a strikeout, and picks up his 16th hold of the season. Then Carmen Mlodzinski, who was also on the IL for a while, comes back with 2 innings, only allows the 1 hit, 2 strikeouts to his credit, and David Bednar, who's been the talk of the town with this bullpen after being taken out of the closer role, gets it done. He goes in with a 5-run advantage, does not allow a base runner, gets a strikeout. Very good outing from him, and another very good outing from the pitching staff. Very indicative of what we saw on Monday when the Pirates clawed back into that game when they were losing 3-0, got the lead late, handed it off to the bullpen. The bullpen did their job. And that's what you want to see from this group. You know, they had a really bad August. It took the Pirates out of any semblance of a playoff spot at this point. But the reason I asked the question, is this an indication for a strong ending to 2024? Well, if the bullpen's going to turn a corner and play like this, and the offense, which has, in all due right, really backed up this team a lot lately, if they can figure this kind of thing out and create kind of that balance that we've been looking for all season, folks, they have a real shot to end this season on a high note. And you're looking at what they have a chance to do today. They have a chance to get Shoto Imanaga and the Chicago Cubs to sweep at 7:40 tonight. It will be Domingo Germán on the mound, so we'll see what happens in this one. But the Pirates with a chance for a big sweep. And if they were to sweep, just to bring up the record, they'd be 66-73, 7 games under 500. You then go home for 9 games where you're playing the Washington Nationals, who are a team that the Pirates can obviously beat, the detrimental Miami Marlins, another team that the Pirates can obviously beat, and a Kansas City Royals team that is going to probably be a playoff team in the American League, but it's still a team that I think the Pirates can match up well against because they do, although the Royals do pitch really well, the Pirates can probably hit against that pitching, and it's a staff that I think the Pirates could do good against. So what you're looking for through the rest of this season, I mean, you have about, I think it's 20 something games left. I never remember the number, but after this Cub series, you have 7 series remaining on the year. And that's what you want to see, is you want to see these guys go into these games, especially in this upcoming series against the Nationals, where you get 4 games against a Washington Nationals team that sold at the deadline, is still kind of retooling and rebuilding and figuring out the pieces that they have, which they do have some very good pieces. They have Dylan Cruz, James Wood, a lot of those other guys, CJ Abrams, Mackenzie Gore. They have a lot of fun stuff down there in Washington, but this is a team that the Pirates should beat. We'll obviously talk about that more tomorrow, but no matter the opponent, no matter the place, no matter the time, if you're going to get quality starting pitching from your starters, as well as now what we've seen the last 2 days, getting quality outings from your bullpen, then that just elevates the ceiling of this team again, because that's what they were doing earlier in the year when the offense wasn't exactly on a heater like it's been as much lately. And I wouldn't even say they're really on much of a heater, but they have been playing much better. But it really just hasn't all come together at one time. And that's kind of where the Pirates have put themselves. And that's why, is because the offense has been hot lately, but the bullpen hasn't been great. Or the offense wasn't great earlier in the season and the bullpen was fine and the pitching was fine. Now you're starting to kind of see it over the last couple of days, kind of all gel together. And if it can find a way in this last month to gel together, I'm not saying that they're going to have a winning record. I'm not saying they're going to go on some crazy Atlanta Braves tear and make the playoffs, but having a strong ending to this season, I think, is almost one of the most important things that we could see from what we've seen over the past 5 years. Because, people love to talk about year 5. And we talked about this a little bit last year also, when they ended the season really well, got to that 76 win mark. They looked like a competitive team down the stretch. They were playing with just about everybody. That's what you want to see again here down the stretch of this season, because you still have games that are important in the division, like the one today against Chicago. You still have a 4-game set in St. Louis, a 3-game series against Cincinnati, and a 3-game series against Milwaukee. That stretch alone, I think, is a big one, because you want to kind of ingrain it in these teams that you're going to be here next year. And you've heard me on this show say it plenty of times, that this team that you are currently seeing in the Pittsburgh Pirates is going to be a very similar roster to what you're going to see in 2025. Additions will obviously happen. Subtractions will obviously happen. But I think it's important for the guys like Paul Skenes and Jared Jones and Nick Gonzalez and O'Neal Cruz and a lot of these younger players that are finally, kind of reaching their potential and kind of finally figuring out where they are as MLB players, to envision themselves saying, well, if we have a good September in 2024 and we don't have an implosion in 2025, then we set ourselves up pretty well. And I think that that's where this team can think as far as this is going. And I think this Cub series is an indication for a strong ending, because, as mentioned before, if you could just get good starts from Keller, Jones, Falter, and Skenes and your whole starting pitching staff, and the bullpen can finally figure it out and start doing what they did the last 2 days and blanking an offense that has been very, very hot as of late, as evidenced the last week, then, folks, you're going to be very happy with what you're going to see down the stretch of this month. And I think you're going to feel a lot better about this season than you have recently, because for a lot of us, including me, this season has felt like it was lost, because it was. They were right there in a playoff spot. They bought at the deadline. It looked like they had the pieces to go for it. Not saying they would have made the playoffs even with that or without that 10-game losing streak, but we'd still be talking about it. We're not talking about it anymore. Now we're talking about ending the season on a high note, ending the season to a point where you go into next season with momentum and say, okay, let's say they get to 78 or 79 wins. One, that's an improvement from last year, not a mighty big improvement, but it's still an improvement. And on top of that, all you're saying is you basically have to be 5 or 6 wins better than you were the previous year. And how do you do that? You just eliminate a 10-game losing streak, which you've now had twice in the last 2 seasons. So again, let's hope they get the sweep tonight. We'll preview that later. I think this is an indication, though, that you are going to like what you see from this team in the final month of the season. But next, me and Gary talked about something on Monday, and I wrote something on Steel City Pirates about the roster decisions that the Pirates are going to have to make with some of these fringe players in the offseason with what's going to be happening soon. So we're going to discuss that and why these roster decisions are tough, but indicate good things to come. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. They have millions of parts for your MVP, and you can win every time with parts that fit your ride, because passion, drive, and patience are the formula for winning championships and also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every single day. After making Locked On Pirates your first listen of the day, make sure you go check out Locked On MLB with Paul Francis Sullivan. He's bringing you all of your news and analysis for everything going on in the world of baseball as October approaches and the season comes to a close. Also, check out Locked On Steelers with Chris Carter, Locked On Penguins with Hunter Hodes to check out all of your Pittsburgh sports and get your fix every single day. So the Pittsburgh Pirates, much like all the other teams in baseball, even the Chicago White Sox, even the Miami Marlins, even the Colorado Rockies, have to make roster decisions and roster moves in the offseason. As far as the 40-man is concerned, you know, you have the Rule 5 draft that gets into a lot of different things, and you talk about all of that stuff and what goes on with roster construction and how this all works. And I think that it's very interesting to go ahead and think about these things, because you're seeing some of these players that I'm going to mention getting opportunities, while you're also seeing other guys just not get those same opportunities. And I mentioned that I will have a story about this on SteelCityPirates.com, so please make sure you go check that out as well. But I like to talk about fringe players because, you know, it may seem really simple to say, okay, well, just get this guy off the roster to put this guy on the roster. It may seem simple, but there's a lot of factors that go into that. And there's a lot of different things that can indicate whether a player is going to stay on the 40-man roster or whether he's not. Obviously, you have designated for assignment that comes into play on the 40-man roster, so you have to hope that a guy doesn't get claimed when that happens. There are guys on this list that would get claimed pretty quickly if they do decide to do that. You could also use these guys as trade pieces to go figure out some things along the roster, like first base, maybe even the bullpen, maybe a backup catcher, maybe another outfielder. You know, these are things that all come into play here. But I want to start with Liover Peguero, because I think Liover Peguero is a very interesting and one of, if not the most interesting fringe players on this list for a multitude of reasons. Because we haven't seen Liover Peguero this year at all. And I find that very interesting because he is a guy that when you look at the roster makeup of this team, he is on the 40-man roster. He's had an okay-ish season in AAA, but I think a lot of that is just due to the fact that I think he's ready to be up here, and he's just not really, I don't want to say he's not giving all he has down there, but I don't think he has really much else to learn at the AAA level. So you consider that and you say, okay, well, why isn't he here yet? And you look at what the Pirates have dealt with this year. You've had Ke'Bryan Hayes manning third at times, but dealing with injuries. You've had Jared Triolo at third base. You've had Alika Williams play shortstop. You've obviously got IKF. You had O'Neal Cruz for a large part of the year. Nick Gonzalez was on a tear there for a while. So there really hasn't been a place to find a spot for Liover Peguero, but he is one of those guys that you're going to have to make a decision on. He's about to be on his fourth year on the 40-man roster, and he's 23 years old. So usually by that point, you're making some kind of impact on the big league roster. I'm not saying that it's a considerable impact. I'm not saying that you're a superstar, but you're usually almost at the least an everyday player, or at least one of those bench bats that they go to late in games if you've been on there that long. And Gary, in his 5 Thoughts at 5, I wrote about this as well. But I do like what he had to say, and I want to quote him here, is that 23 years old, Peguero isn't old, but he's been on the 40-man for 3 years now. A player rarely gets a fourth without impacting Major League Baseball. He's had a rather pedestrian AAA season, a negative .4 WAR on the season to be specific. But the thing is, he's been professional in baseball long enough that he really should be dominating his level, not just existing. I don't think there's much more to learn about Jared Triolo right now or Isaiah Kiner-Falefa at this point. So if I'm the Pirates, I use this time to get Peguero up here, plop him at short, slide IKF to third, and let the last month here guide me as to whether keeping Peggy on the 40-man roster is smart. So that's what Gary had to say about that. And I can't agree more. I mean, if you want to you're going to have to make a decision on Liover Peguero. And if I'm the Pittsburgh Pirates, I want to make sure I do my due diligence in that. And if we were to forget, a lot of people will forget that he did get a pretty considerable shot last year in 2023. He had a 654 OPS and 198 at-bats, 7 homers, 26 RBIs. But I still think there's stuff to be said about Peguero because he has his entire career ahead of him still. I think if he comes up in his shows that he can do something, at worst, he's a bench bat, or you end up using him as a trade piece because another team would more than take Liover Peguero on a flyer. They would more than have him available. And I think it's interesting because I do think the kid is talented. He just hasn't found a place. And then when you even want to go further, you're going to have Termarr Johnson up here at some point. So how much do you trust Liover Peguero on this roster? You got to figure it out at the MLB level, and that's the only way you're going to do it. Jared Triolo is another one. He's obviously been in the spotlight since Ke'Bryan Hayes has been on the injured list a good bit of times over the last 2 seasons. Had a pretty good 2023 on the surface. His advanced numbers like BABIP and other things suggested otherwise, and we're kind of seeing that otherwise this year. Doesn't have the power potential, although the numbers are up in his home runs. The OPS is very down. The glove cannot be denied with a guy like Jared Triolo, but when you consider a guy like maybe Liover Peguero coming up and playing shortstop, now that O'Neal Cruz has moved to center field, you'd probably want to have IKF at third or available somewhere. And I don't know if you want to keep Jared Triolo around when he's just not hitting all that well. He has a 206, 294, 305, 599 slash this year. When you also consider other guys on the 40-man, like I mentioned, Peguero and even Sung Shea Shang, starts to get a little interesting. And then you have Ji-Hwan Bae, kind of the same deal. I mean, Ji-Hwan Bae just isn't hitting the ball all that great. Much like Jared Triolo, he's just not an offensive guy. And now with O'Neal Cruz moving to center field, it makes me wonder, well, where do you play Ji-Hwan Bae at this point? I don't think you want to have 2 left-handed center fielders because O'Neal Cruz is going to start out there more than often anyway. And defensively, Ji-Hwan Bae just isn't all that great in center field and right field. The arm doesn't really offer any value. He struggles to get the balls at times. And then in the infield, where he's also played previously, you get worried about that too, because there's no spot for him. I just mentioned Liover Peguero not even really having a spot. So I'm not going to give one to Ji-Hwan Bae either. And yes, He's hit the ball really well in AAA. Yes, he's shown potential in AAA, but it just hasn't amounted to anything at the MLB level. So I do think that Ji-Hwan Bae could be a roster casualty. Alika Williams, same thing as Jared Triolo. Very good defensively at shortstop. I just don't know if it's enough to keep him around because the bat is just not there. Connor Joe is an interesting one, but he, unlike a lot of these guys, has shown it before. He had a very strong start to this 2024 season. He's had success elsewhere at other places. He could help still with that first base void that they're still trying to figure out. Obviously, with Rowdy Tellez being a free agent, we don't know if the Pirates are going to bring him back or not. We don't really know what the Pirates are going to do with first base at all. Now, obviously, Jack Sawinski will probably be back in 2025 with the addition of O'Neal Cruz to the outfield and Brian De La Cruz to right field. That kind of eliminates Connor Joe's potential to play out there all that much. So he is somebody that I think you can watch. I would expect that he would be back, but I'm not all entirely sure about it either. And then just to throw some other names out there about guys like this. I mean, Billy McKinney is already 30, hasn't shown me much. I don't think he'll be here. Palacios is an interesting one. Joshua Palacios, friend of the show, already 29. Kind of tough to find a place for him, though. Jason DeLay is an interesting one also. Grandal will be gone, but you have Endy Rodriguez coming back. The jury's still out on what they're going to do with Endy next year, but I would assume that Henry Davis and Joey Bart are going to be the guys that are manning the catching position next year. Maybe you see him as minor league depth, but I'm not sure. And then obviously I've mentioned the free agents, Yasmani Grandal, Michael A. Taylor, Rowdy Tellez, Aroldis Chapman, and Andrew McCutchen. Kutch will be back. The jury's out on if Chapman and Tellez will be back, so we'll see what they decide to do there. And then you have Grandal and Taylor that will be as good as gone, so that'll open up some roster spots. But these are all good things for this team. These are all things that the Pirates having to make these decisions, these are good things and indicate good things to come because you're going to have guys like a Bubba Chandler and a Braxton Ashcraft and a Thomas Harrington at some point next year probably push for a 40-man roster spot. You're going to have to put Billy Cook and Nick York on the 40-man and see what they can do next season as well. So a lot of just new talent coming in. So we'll continue to see what the Pirates are going to be able to do with the roster when the offseason approaches. Folks, we're going to update you a little bit on Termarr Johnson and what he's doing in Double-A. Might not be all that great, but we're still going to talk about Termarr because I love him. And we're going to preview quickly the Game 3 potential sweep for the Pittsburgh Pirates on the rest of today's episode of Locked On Pirates. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app in America with over 5 million active members. One Caleb Williams passing yard can get you one win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. So don't miss this deal on Prize Picks because it's gone when September ends. Shout out Green Day. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So don't forget also that you can still get on Prize Picks with baseball as well. And download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive your $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks allows you to curate and make it easier to save more on sports, comedy, concerts, theater, and more. You can toggle all-in pricing to show your total up front with no surprise fees at checkout, and their lowest price guarantee allows you to get the lowest price, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off, and download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And welcome, everybody, to the final part of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates, every day. If you want to listen to Pirates games on the go this September, make sure you go to the SiriusXM app and just search Pirates, and you'll be able to find the Pittsburgh Pirates on the radio while you're on the go. Speaking of on the go, Termarr Johnson not too long ago was promoted from High A Greensboro to Double A Altoona. I will probably be going to an Altoona Curve game sometime this month to go catch Termarr Johnson play. You guys know here, if you're a longtime everyday listener, that I absolutely love Termarr Johnson. I was ecstatic when they drafted him. I think he's going to be a phenomenal big league player eventually. His power tool is phenomenal for his size. I love left-handed second baseman. I think they offer so much. And Termarr this year has offered a good bit. I mean, 416 at-bats on the season, a 231 average, 14 homers and 48 RBIs, 21 stolen bases, and a 744 OPS. Talking about a guy that has potential 2020 power and speed. So you always like to hear that as well. But when you speak about Termarr Johnson, he's had a home run in Double A. He got his first home run in Double A on August 28th. He has struggled a little bit since he got to Altoona, but I'm not all that worried about it. But even going into next year, folks, I think Termarr Johnson is a guy that you need to be able to watch going into next season. I think Termarr has the chance to make a real impact on this Pirates team at some point next season, if not early 2026. I think he's going to fully take over that second base position when he gets here, or at worst, just be a straight-up DH and be phenomenal in that role as well. And I'm very excited for him, man. And hopefully, if I go to one of the Altoona Curve games to go see him, you come see me. If I'm there, I'll be there. Because guess what? Let's go see him play, because he's one of the best prospects to me in baseball. Meanwhile, on the big league team, the Pittsburgh Pirates will look to sweep the Chicago Cubs tonight. 65-73 Pirates versus the 71-68 Chicago Cubs. It will be Domingo Germán versus Shoto Imanaga. Shoto Imanaga obviously having a phenomenal start to his technical rookie campaign, seeing as it is his first season at Major League Baseball. Still has been very impressive this year, 11-3 with a 3.14 ERA. Pirates have faced him before and not really had that much success, but Shoto Imanaga, a lefty, the Pirates have shown that they have lefty killers on this team. And what is interesting about Shoto, though, much like Paul Skenes a little bit, is his numbers still suggest that he's had a phenomenal season. Don't get that wrong at all. But he has taken a dip a little bit. I mean, you look at what he's done in his last 15 games, a 3.97 ERA. You go to his last 7, it's a 3.83. He's allowed only 3 runs or less, though, in his last 3 starts. Those against Washington, Miami, and Toronto. So not exactly offenses that are all that great. Pirates offense ain't all that great either. But Pirates, again, like I mentioned, have seen him before. They saw him back on May 18th, where he threw 7 scoreless innings. They've seen him also. I think that was the only time they saw him this year. Yes, so that was the last time they saw him. So they'll get a chance for retribution there. Meanwhile, Domingo Germán been thrust back into a starter role after being in the bullpen, a 6.11 ERA with 17 innings for Germán, 15 strikeouts in 6 appearances. So you're hoping you see a little bit more from Germán. He did okay against the Cleveland Guardians, 3 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 earned runs. That Chicago Cubs series last week, though, he had a really, really bad run of things. 2 2/3, 8 earned runs, 4 walks, and 6 hits in relief. But he did have that good start in Texas where he had 6 innings pitched of scoreless baseball. So that's your pitching matchup. But what I think the Pirates have to hold their hats on again is, can the bullpen go out there and be what it's been the last 2 games. Can the offense get an early lead and let the bullpen win the game for them? I know that's hard to say from what we've seen over the past month, but just over the past 2 days, like I mentioned earlier, this bullpen has done their job. They've made sure the Pirates can win these games. They've taken onus. They've shown that they can turn the page and turn a corner, and we'll see if they can do it again and get a massive series sweep against the Chicago Cubs tonight at Wrigley Field, and we'll be watching, as we always do here at the Locked On Pirates podcast. Folks, my name is Ethan Smith. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. You can find this show on YouTube and all of your audio platforms. Find us wherever you get your podcast because it's free and available to you every Monday through Friday. Have a phenomenal rest of your Wednesday, folks. We'll see you tomorrow to preview the Washington Nationals series, talk a little bit about Dylan Cruz and Paul Skenes. But until then, we'll see you on the flip side.